Season 2 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place to learn more about homeopathy, deepening your knowledge, expanding your universe of possibility in the world of health and well-being through homeopathy.
Homeo what?
Homeo what?
Enrollment for fall semester at AHE is underway. There have been lots of recent changes in our offerings. Professional programs now start at $16,000. Early enrollment discounts are available until May 15th. Get your application in and chat with the admissions team. Your journey starts now.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Welcome.
All the things.
All the things.
In all the places. Yeah.
Hey, we are
having tea.
Doing our first podcast in a couple of weeks because last week we were a little busy.
Look, I'm blurry because it's fixated on you. That's
No,
okay.
I think it's your imagination.
I don't mind.
Now look, we're in our library and in front of the books, Denise is pouring some tea. The tea is called the Filthy Vicar. No, the Naughty Minx. The what?
Dirty Vicar? No.
No, the Naughty Vicar.
Naughty Vicar?
Naughty Minister?
No, Vicar.
Vicar.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a gift from our dear friend and colleague, Molly Erlinger. And it's delicious.
It really is.
So now you get to see, not only do you get the audio, but the video.
And by the way, that's not a sponsored
it's not
advertisement.
It's just a recommendation. Cheers, you.
Oh, man. And look at this. My wife is somewhat clever because these came out of the kiln today.
Just today.
Yeah.
Yep.
The glaze is awesome, and
Thanks.
And I love the shape. And there's another 20 of them. Anyone interested? $35.
No.
All right.
Anyway, so how are we going to not be distracted now doing this by video?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And for people who aren't watching the video, it might be weird.
It's a little weird, folks, because
It's weird.
I've had to wash my hands for the first time in months. I've just come in from the garden. I know it sounds disgusting, but you see, when you do podcasts with no visuals, it's kind of, you get away with it.
So maybe this is going to work out in my benefit.
Yeah, I'm going to smell better and look better.
We didn't have any water for 2 days. They didn't give us any notice. We got a letter from the water department. Yeah, we might turn off your water. I don't know what they were doing. And then yesterday and the day before, the water went off. And then when it came back on, the force with which it came on
Blew the top off the toilet.
Blew the lid off the toilet tank, and water went everywhere. And we kept hearing this loud sound. The only time I've ever seen something like that happen before was we were in Washington, D.C. We were teaching in a hotel back in 2018.
Oh, what a story.
Like
This is a great story.
It's actually a great story, and it has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today, but why not start with it?
We were going to see... Were we doing Homeopaths on the Hill?
I think it was, we were doing something with Americans for Homeopathy Choice. We were staying in this hotel in D.C., and when we first booked the hotel, part of choosing it was because we said, do you have a business center? Because we both had to teach. And they said, oh, yeah, we have a business center, whatever. We get there, of course, there's no business center. There wasn't even anything. I mean, I think there was a printer.
There wasn't even a booth with a printer.
There was a printer, but I think, that was it. Anyway, and so Al got to teach. Explain where you got to do your lecture.
So I explained my predicament because we both had to teach at the same time,
Right.
and you can't do that on Zoom in a hotel room. Only one can be in the room.
Well, we have done it. And
Well,
actually,
never
it's a
was.
good thing that we didn't, because when we've done
that's
it,
right, 'cause we've
you've
done
done
it.
it in the bathroom,
Right.
positioning
I
yourself.
have delivered a lecture in a
But
bathroom.
you've also delivered a lecture once when we were on Fire Island, sitting on top of the washing
In the
machine.
laundry, yeah.
Not with it on.
But in this
Anyway.
instance, the hotel happened to be the place on the top floor where they've got the, what do you call it, the studio for
The
Veep.
set. The set.
For
Yeah.
Veep.
Yeah.
And so I was able to deliver my lecture from the Vice President's chair.
Do we have a recording of that? That would
I've
be
got
amazing.
plenty of photos. We'll
We
get
have
some photos. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was all the things. The only dead giveaway was the portrait of Tina Fey on the back wall.
Yeah. But meantime, while he's there sitting in the
Yeah.
Veep space, like having the time of his life, I'm sitting at the desk in the hotel, and I was teaching. And you can't make this up. This is honest to God true. I was teaching the bowel nosons, and I'm sitting there and I'm teaching, and all of a sudden there's this rumbling sound.
It wasn't your stomach.
No, it wasn't me. It was coming from behind me, and then I heard a really loud sound, and then I heard water, and I looked. I opened the door to the bathroom, and the toilet tank had exploded, and I threw all these towels, closed the door. Water was coming out from under the door.
Were you in the middle of your lecture?
I was in the middle of teaching it. I wish I could remember. I'm sure if somebody's listening and you were in that lecture, I need to hear from you. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was crazy. That's in the you can't make this up category.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
you are a saucy minx, and you... No.
So one of our cats, Luna, usually it's Hildegard of Bingen, who likes to be involved with the podcast, but now it's
Yeah.
Luna.
You know, when your cat gets on the desk, they look for the thing to scratch their necks against, which happens to be this device. Mm-hmm. No, it's not going to happen. Anywho, what in our last week, we've had a hell of a week.
The last time we recorded was...
A fortnight ago.
yeah, and it was the post-acute.
Yeah, that's right. We're really sick.
The coughing. That was the sitting on the couch with a blanket podcast.
That was the one.
We're better.
But I tell you what, I have to say for me, the most amazing thing that's happened in the last couple of weeks is that we were granted honorary membership to the American Institute of Homeopathy. And that came out of a clear blue sky. Did not expect that.
No.
Even though, if you've seen the video, I did pretend to swoon and faint.
Yeah.
That was
As
genuine.
if you had a corset that was too tight.
Yes.
It was... We had no
I need
idea.
Where's the chaise lounge? I must unbutton my corset.
We had no idea this was coming in. And Lisa Amorine, who, congratulations, Lisa, has just been named president of the AIH,
Nice one.
succeeding Dr. Alex Becker. And so Lisa, who is a dear friend and an amazing naturopath and homeopath and just, I don't know, she's a spark. So she's a friend. So, of course, when we see her coming up to us at our booth at the Joint American Homeopathy Conference, we think she's come to say hello. So we're chatting. I didn't notice somebody's videoing the whole thing. And then she starts making this formal presentation. And we're like, wait, what? Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
It was.
That's a flying pig moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
But with a bit of humour added to it, the previous evening we'd run into Lisa in the lift, in the elevator, and
I gave her a hug and I squished what she was holding, which I didn't know were the certificates that we were getting. So apparently we're getting new ones because they're all scrunched up.
so we got a couple of scrunched
Yeah.
certificates because Denise scrunched them.
In my exuberance to hug. my
Yeah,
friend.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, what a story.
Yeah, that was
But
pretty
look,
good.
the other dramatic thing that happened is we gave a couple of talks, and long talks, 1 3/4 hour talks. I thought those days were gone. I'm a fan of the 15-minute scientific. These are the facts. How did you talk to the folks about what what went on?
We had begged, cajoled the NCH to have a research track at this year's conference. And it was kind of what we had envisioned. We had a real clear idea. Anyway, if you get 50% of what you want, you should be more than 50% happy because you might have got nothing. Anyway,
right.
so but
That's
we had
half
envisioned something a little bit different, but what we got was actually pretty good, and it was 4 sessions, and we got to select the folks that would present. And the way the day went was I did the opening, sort of a why research, and then was able to present the findings from the Homeopathy Help Network clinical what's. Our clinic, from when we started in March of 2020 until now. And then Alastair followed after I went, and we were each in a different room, which was sort of funny. Anyway, but
before you get to me,
Well, we'll go back and we'll talk details.
Yeah,
but then Alastair did his talk, which was about the Practitioner Generated Research Network and looking at the ways in which individuals can participate. And then the third talk, which I have to say I think was my favorite. It was Elizabeth Rice, Dr. Elizabeth Rice, who's a naturopath who works at Sonoran University, who, I mean, I always knew she was like the coolest, but man, is she a great teacher. Part of the idea with this research track was to introduce everyone to sort of the why research, the how research, and please don't be intimidated by research because we need you in research. And then, yeah. And so what we asked Betsy to do was sort of an overview on how to read a research article beyond just reading the abstract. And so she did this incredible systematic walkthrough of how to consume a research article. And she had like worksheets with it, and I learned so much. And it was funny because I said to her, I was like, that was amazing. I learned so much. And she just assumed that, because we're researchers, we would have known that. But, we learned from each other. Like she had different tips and a couple of websites that I had never heard of. I mean, it was amazing. And she's such a good teacher. Anyway, and I loved how many people were there. I mean, it wasn't like a giant group because they had our track was one of 3, whatever. But the folks that were there in Betsy's talk, it was like everyone was engaged in actually learning how to do this work.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because that was active learning. And I wonder sometimes in those big long talks with rambling cases that go on for an hour and a half, if it's more just edutainment.
I mean, that's fine. We're there for the snacks and the drinks, of which there were too many.
And then there was Kieran Cooley.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I've not had a chance to watch his talk because he wasn't able to arrive in Virginia.
He had a family emergency.
Yeah, and so, I mean, shout out to him and hope everything is well in your world.
I'm excited to listen to it because he was the culmination of the day, and his talk was on how he's also a naturopathic doctor, and we specifically looked to bring naturopaths into the conversation because I think that they are ahead of the homeopaths in terms of how they've got their act together. They've got the educational institutions at a much they've scaled it in a way that's just bigger.
Well, I have really, and that's why I thought he would be a great invitee. And so I've heard him speak on a number of occasions. I first met him in Korea.
In Korea,
yeah, South Korea, at Jeju, I think is the island. Anyway, it's kind of a conference island, It's like Cannes.
Conference island.
Yeah. And like San Antonio.
Yeah.
And he and others have really pointed out to me that the naturopathic folks, they are in fact well ahead of the homeopathic folks in a sense, because by creating strategic research initiatives and filling gaps, which is gaps in knowledge, in mechanism of action, clinical research, naturopathy, and in its clinical manifestations, they've been able to knock off a number of requirements that the World Health Organization, in particular, require any budding, 150-year-old,
230-year-old profession.
230-year-old profession. And I wanted him to speak about that, and so I'm, I don't know if that's exactly what was delivered, but I've heard him and others in that world, and they're really adjacent to us. And it, of course, for us to move, proceed, take it forward, we do have to think somewhat strategically about what's missing for those folks that don't know about homeopathy or necessarily care. They might be involved in public health or in some sort of other adjacent health services research roles, and don't necessarily know about our nuanced.
So it's on us to educate. It's on us to communicate.
Well, and also, I mean, it was a bit strategic because, as you just said, you learned a lot.
I totally learned a lot
from Betsy's presentation.
Yep.
Now, so that's capacity building.
Yeah.
Right? Other folks were there as well. And I think, mission accomplished, tick, tick, from that point of view.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It was good.
All right. So, that's the overview. But you said a whole lot of really important stuff as well in your talk.
You think?
I did.
I'm a little fixated. You've got your portrait, fix up my appearance thing, and it's on you. Because if I put my head there, I look 10 years younger. And look at that.
Look, you do look 10 years younger.
See,
oh,
look. That's me 10 years younger. There's me. Oh, look.
So what I've done is I've got the settings so that I look 10 years younger, and you
I'm
look...
a hag.
Well, you're the cougar that you are.
Right, because we're almost 10 months apart.
Yeah, it's a big gap.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So in my talk, so one of the things, when I was thinking about how to engage people in thinking about the question, why research, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and also to begin to have the conversation to make research accessible. I mean, for me, as a homeopath, not thinking about sort of the work, because really the research work that I do is historical research and clinical research, but not like what the statisticians do. And some of the conversations that happen in research feel difficult for us practitioners to really hold. I mean, you and I both have talked about how when we go to the scientific conferences in homeopathy and the physicists are talking about what they do, it's like I get all excited and then I'm 10 minutes in and I'm like, I'm lost. You know, I can't.
You start knitting.
I start knitting. Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to just really be clear, to sort of have a conversation about, you know, why do we need to do this? And so basically the arc of the talk was what is a research question, and how does a research question, sort of the way that you state your question and the way that you look for information, how does it influence what information you provide in the end? Yeah. And don't let me forget that, because I want to talk about that with the COVID data. Don't let me forget that point. But and then the other thing was, okay, so there's what is the research question, but then if we think about the why research, so if we're trying to get busy practitioners engaged in this work, then there needs to be a mandate that is enticing enough for people to do something beyond their regular day. I'd rather go do something fun, go to my garden, go to my studio instead of doing research, right? So how can we get people sort of jazzed for that? And to that end, the way that I chose to present it was with a whole lot of data about how broken the American medical system is. Just by looking at I had a lot of charts from the Commonwealth Fund about healthcare spending, insurance, how the United States has the fewest, I think it's the second fewest number of hospital beds and shortest hospital stays, and yet I was demonstrating all of these diseases for which there are increases in long-term hospitalizations, especially with younger people. Crohn's disease, for example. I have a chart that shows how incidences of Crohn's disease have increased and longer hospitalizations for, I think it's like the 16 to 20-year-olds. And so there's a lot of, you really start to see when you just look at these numbers how broken the system is. And then I pivoted to looking at it through the lens of, what my clinical specialty is, which is autoimmunity, and looking at it and saying, look, these are all of the conditions that are autoimmune in nature, most of which are impacting multiple organ systems, right, in the individual, and how the medical system, which is set up to deal with end-stage pathology or necrology, the dead stuff, basically, right, isn't really, through no fault of anyone's other than just the way that the arc of history has built this behemoth of a system, that it's not set up to deal with the complexities of the diseases of today. You get into something like alpha-gal syndrome, mast cell activation syndrome, PANS and PANDAS. I mean, how, if we look at PANDAS, for example, who deals with it? An infectious disease specialist, someone just, a pediatric, psychiatrist because of the mental and emotional issues. I mean, there are all different ways to look at it. I mean, if you look at it historically, it came in through the lens of Sydenham's Korea. So is it a neurologist that looks at it? I mean, how do we understand this? So by doing that setup, that wind up became the impetus for the homeopaths to step in to solve the problems, because we are weirdly prepared for where medicine is today.
That is such a critical point. It's really interesting because I was at your talk and I was attentive.
Yeah, I saw you. You look like you were awake the whole time.
I was,
Thanks.
but I didn't hear that point. We are absolutely set up to deal with
Sure.
in an integrative way.
Don't you remember I have the slide of underdog and it says, have no fear, the homeos are here.
That was that slide.
That's because it was exciting and it was funny and all that. So,
So for those, I mean, just clinically,
Yeah.
to assist with people that have complex chronic health problems,
Yep.
where reductionistic specialists, all they can do is their corner of it and refer to the next person.
That's
their
it.
corner of it, refer to the next person. And here we are.
And then
Here's the research office. We're also able to, ask slightly different questions to be able to deal with the nuances of
right.
homeopathy treatment.
But let's go back for a second, because what you said was, a person goes to see the specialist who deals with it and sends them on to the next person and the next person and the next person, each of whom is presumably or potentially giving a medication. And so if you've got a multisystemic issue and you're getting prescribed a medication from 2, 3, or 4 different specialists, the interaction of those medications creates its own iatrogenic problem. And that takes us to what you just said, which is, that's from a research standpoint, when you're looking at issues that affect multiple organ systems, that's really difficult when you're looking through the lens of a reductionistic research paradigm, but not for homeopathy, right? So one of the, there's an instrument that we've been using for, gosh, how long? Since 2018?
Which?
MyCaw?
MyCaw,
No, 2020.
It's 2020.
2020. So we used to use an instrument that's called the MyMop, and then we switched to something called the MyCaw. And
This is in both chronic
acute.
prescribing clinic and acute prescribing clinic too.
And it's a really simple instrument. It asks that the client identify 2 issues that are most bothersome to them. It's a 6-point Likert scale. 5, 6?
Well, it's 7, 0 to 6.
0 to 6, yeah. And so they identify where they are, and then there's an overall well-being question, and then there's an open-ended question, are you doing anything else, and how do you feel about your practitioner? And then you measure that after each visit. There are definite issues with the instrument, but we'll leave that out for today. Well, actually, no, let me present. The one thing that I find most challenging with that instrument is that when your client comes to see you, it's generally not because they're feeling at the top of their game. And so what you're asking at the end of a follow-up is where they are now with their complaint, which I think suggests that it's going to be lower than it would have been 2 weeks ago, maybe, or a week ago, when they were still doing really well.
Can I rebut that?
Yeah, please.
Because I hear that all the time, folks.
Yeah.
Bit of context. So, in other words, my presenting complaint is my diarrhea, and that's a 5 out of 6, meaning it's really, really bad. It's troubling me a lot this week. And then there's a second symptom, and then there's the well-being question. And then I go away, I take my homeopathic remedy, and I come back for my follow-up visit. And what Denise is saying is that because the numeric is attached to the clinical visit, quite often those clinical visits are because my symptoms have started to come back again, and therefore they're not that accurate. I don't see it that way at all. No, because actually over time and with numbers, it all balances out completely.
I see what you're saying.
So, by the way, I thought that you were having digestive troubles. I'm holding on to Denise's leg here.
Because we have to sit really
and
close.
I was feeling this
it was
gurgling.
my phone in my pocket.
It was this gurgling in her stomach and vibration.
That's why you chose the pathology that you did for your
Must have been.
fictitious chief
Anyway,
complaint.
throw
No,
that
it was
away.
that I had my phone in my pocket and it was vibrating.
Put it away.
Anyway,
So,
my goodness.
So I'm glad
TMI.
Yeah, but so it actually statistically balances out as soon as you get up to about maybe 30 people, 40 people, and over a period of time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because what you're looking at, because you're always in a paper. If you're using that tool, you're using averages.
Yeah.
And averages, average,
right,
or
right.
means. Sorry, using
well,
means.
and I guess I should have just looked at it through the perspective of the outcomes.
But I'm sorry. Can I keep going on my point?
Of course.
Because in that conversation we had with Dr. Jennifer Barr's team, that's their concern. And
Right.
it doesn't matter.
So this
it
is-
actually doesn't matter.
Dr. Jennifer Barr is the person who founded Resilience Homeopathy. Resilience is what it's called. Resilience, yeah. And they work with it's all naturopaths, and they work with pans and pandas.
And so everyone's correct with that sort of criticism, because you're right. The
Right.
number should be here,
Yeah.
but actually it's there, or at least it's the opposite. Because
yeah, but at the end of the day,
it
the
averages
numbers,
out just fine. Doesn't matter.
okay.
It totally doesn't matter.
So the numbers.
As soon as your study is powered,
Yeah.
I've got something to say.
Oh yeah, of course.
As soon as you've got enough participants in your study,
Yeah.
and you're, and then you're doing good statistical analysis,
Yeah.
it's totally fine.
Yeah. Good.
I mean, it's a validated outcome measure. They've taken that into
For
account.
that reason, yeah. So I was presenting the outcomes from our acute clinic, right? So started, and when we recorded about this a couple of times ago with the birthday of Homeopathy Help Now, so we had, I did a slice of our cases, and those cases were from March 2020 to December, the end of the year 2021. And then compared it to the big picture, which was from March 2020 until April of 2024, when we were hovering in we've taken in over 5,000 cases, but there are all these criteria because some people go to chronic, some people have to go to an independent practitioner because they risk out from a teaching clinic and so forth. So I think the sample we were using was like 4,300 cases, something like that. Anyway, our statistical improvement for our clients in the acute care setting, which includes the early days of COVID, which is pretty amazing, was like 83 point something percent. That was wild to see,
Yeah, so there's
And-
two ways to look at that. But do you want to?
Oh, sorry, 93, not 83, 93.
But do you want to look at that from a research perspective?
Well, can I finish my thought? I mean, I'll let you finish yours. But it was that our chronic clinic has really similar outcomes, 96.4% improvement.
86.
Oh, sorry, 86.
Yeah, it's 86.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
86.4%. That's a lot. That's amazing. In a chronic clinic where the cases are supervised, but it's students, that's great.
It is, and it's important for us all to hear that. We cannot make any claims about that from a research perspective,
Right.
Because we're not
'Cause there's
comparing
no-
it against
right,
anything,
exactly.
and that matters. So what we've done is a case series, right, and a case series from again from that
But that's why we need other
research
groups.
perspective is not at the bottom of the evidence hierarchy. It sits higher, but still towards the bottom third of the evidence hierarchy. You cannot make any claims at all about efficacy. It's
Right.
important for us to hear it,
Yeah.
that we're doing well, but that doesn't mean that homeopathy is effective from a whole lot of different perspectives, because it's an acute resolve anyway.
But that's why I said with the chronic,
Right.
which we even get better results from.
Sure. But again,
Yeah.
without something to compare it against,
Sure.
that piece of research is always going to be seen as, oh, that's really interesting, and that's going to inform homeopaths or a research team of the next thing to
Sure.
explore.
But imagine, I mean, the
But
way.
we just got to be a bit careful with how we language it.
But as we launch the PGRN, like for example, tomorrow, what are you wagging?
Well, I'm just, people just be, you can't overreach.
Yeah.
It's really important that if what Denise just said is operationally for homeopaths really critical, but we cannot generalize about that until we've run a clinical study.
Which is why the next part of my message is so critical, which is we need more people.
Yes.
One of the reasons, so in order to reach our capacity goals, which is 25,000 cases, and I want to get there soon, we need more teams to come together to do this. And it's been really great because people have reached out to us since we did our presentations last week saying, how can we be a part of this? Anyway, but we need other teams because then we can make a comparison. Then we've got more data that we can look at. It would be great to look at, if we are able to work with the folks at Resilience to say, okay, this is what, a team of naturopaths working in the space of pans and pandas cases, this is what they're saying relative to a generalized situation, or people who are seeing pans and pandas cases but aren't, necessarily experts or focused narrowly into that field, for example, right? Then it becomes comparative. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's why we've had a couple conversations with folks in the UK, and it would be amazing if we could get a group in another country, where we can, do the same system, share the same data, but then it gives us that comparative, ability.
Yep.
Yeah. You see this, if people are watching this on video, there's a cat who is going to, at some point, bite or scratch one of us.
Yeah, it's going to be you. It is definitely going to be you.
It is, because she's really...
Yeah. Right. There you go, making muffins.
No muffins, no biscuits.
So, what else did you say? There's something that you didn't say and that I probably overcooked in my talk, because I think that you hide your light under a bushel.
Oh, don't go there again.
Well, no, I think it's really important.
I mean, it's lovely. I think it's really lovely that you do, but it's... I don't think so.
Well, okay. The point that I made in my talk that Denise underplays is that in her research, because you did talk about your research a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is my historical research.
Is pulled back the rug, and there under the rug is clear evidence that the history of medicine or the history of microbiology is wrong.
I would say it differently.
Well, no, you don't say it, so I'm going to say
wrong.
it. Well, it is, because it starts with Koch and Pasteur.
Okay, fair enough. But it's...
And it doesn't. It starts with herring.
I would say it not so much that it's wrong, but it is not fully inclusive.
Yes. That's what I'm
saying. I'm too nice. But, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was how I got... That's how I was able to, I think... That was probably the core that got my thesis over the line, right? Because I was able to show that Constantine Herring, as early as 1830 to 1833, was isolating biological products, morbific agents, whatever, disease products, germs, and considering them in their role in what becomes biomedicine.
Isn't it even Hahnemann that says, at some point, chronic diseases? I think the cause of disease are millions of tiny animals.
Yeah,
doesn't he say that?
He does. I mean, it would depend on the translation to get the term, because there was a term used in that point in history. They called them, I can never remember how to say it. It's like animalcules.
Huh?
Animalcules. That was like the idea of germs. But Hahnemann
what a great word.
It is. It's a really great word, and that's probably the translation. But there's in the first edition of the Organon that we have that has some of the essays in it. And I'm sure you can find it in Hahnemann's lesser writings. Hahnemann wrote an essay called, what?
We're in the right place.
Yeah, called On Epidemics, which is a direct ripoff of Hippocrates. Not ripoff, but it's a replication, right? Hippocrates wrote a whole treatise on epidemics, and then Hahnemann did as well. And I think it's called On Epidemics. Maybe I'm making that up. That's Farrington's lesser writings. Let me see if...
It's behind you.
There's one behind me. Can you get this cat? You talk and I'll...
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I can't.
All right, so I got the cat, and I'll let you know what I spoke about, because in the talk that I gave, I also gave a bit of background, but it was a different background. And what it was the background was, who are the clients that are coming to homeopathy? Which sounds like a kind of a simple and daft question, but it's not. Because when we know exactly who's been coming to homeopathy, then we can speak to them and we can get more folks coming to homeopathy. It's of operational importance for us. Now, of course, in some other professions close to homeopathy and the broader profession of complementary medicine, there's been plenty of research on who uses complementary medicine. You okay if I keep going?
Yeah, keep going. Whoops.
So, who uses complementary medicine is kind of a broadly researched question, and there's been lots and lots of work done in the last 15 years. And one really particularly good paper by an old colleague of mine, Rebecca Reed, in Australia, and some other folks in the US. Now, what we know from all of that research is that the complementary medicine user is generally female, generally better educated, with above average income, with one or two chronic conditions, and who have been project managing their own research into looking towards a treatment. And it's very well known what are the push and the pull factors when it comes to complementary medicine. Push meaning the things that people don't like about conventional medicine, and pull factors meaning the things that are really attractive about naturopathy or homeopathy. Oh, yaha.
There we go.
There we go, with the left shoulder.
shoulder.
So this is a left shoulder cat. And so we don't know that about homeopathy, or at least if homeopathy is a part of complementary medicine, then we would assume it's the same. But I've known in my bones for a long time that it's not in my bones. So we formalised it, and we've conducted a small piece of research, looking at 300 cases that have come to the chronic clinic at AHE over the last number of years. 300 cases, and we've used the intake form. So the method we used was to evaluate the intake forms that we have. Now, not every homeopath in the world uses an intake form, but many do. And our intake form at AHE is fairly elaborate. It takes about, I'd say, between 7 to 10 minutes to fill out. And it provides just background information, background health, medical information. But it's full of gold, absolutely full of gold from a researching perspective. And so in evaluating the intake forms, we've been able to show that, the client that comes to see the homeopath is 75% female, but not with a high level of income, and not necessarily with a high level of education, although that's a question that we've still got to evaluate even further. And on top of that, yes, with multiple chronic conditions, but there are other nuances. So by looking at all of the features, from gender through to age, through to how did you find out about the clinic, through to what condition do you have, we've been able to highlight some fairly important differences between what we thought we knew before and now what we know. Now, the limitation of that study is that it's just on one clinic, and our clinic is a telehealth clinic, and it's low cost, and it's oriented towards to being freely accessible, or not freely accessible, but very accessible. So that's not everyone's clinic. Now, what we need is you, actually, and the invitation will arrive very shortly. Please, if you've not joined the PGRN, then please go to HOM Foundation, HOHM Foundation.org, navigate to the PGRN page on the research click down, and just put in your details. That's it. We just need an email from you. And from there, what you'll see is we now need your intake forms. What we require to make our piece of research more robust are other clinical settings. And if you can give us 5 de-identified intake forms, or 50, or your last 5 years, oh my goodness, suddenly we don't have 300 cases or intake forms that we're evaluating. We've got 3,000. And that is a really robust piece of research. So please, I'm not going to do it right now, but shortly you'll be able to, you'll hear about the specific nitty-gritty. Please put a line through the client's name on the intake form if it's PDF, or de-identify it, and then drop it into, it's going to be a Google Drive bucket. And from there, our data angels are going to be able to upload it to our coding frame, and then we're going to be able to do some magic with understanding who's coming to see us. Such a critical question.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's so important. Imagine, and this was, so if we, I want to go back to something from my talk, but I also want to say I had the title all wrong. It's not on epidemics.
What's the title?
It's, well, there are two, there are a few things in here, and we'll talk about it in a second, but the part of what I was presenting in my talk that sort of preempts what Al was just talking about is part of the why that we're doing this research is because we need to be able to share with the people who are responsible for the budgets in hospitals or insurance companies, or, who in some places it would be a minister of health, or, someone who is responsible for the bottom line. Bureaucrats who are responsible for the bottom line in the provision of healthcare. Mm-hmm. And once you see the ways in which homeopathy can be delivered in an economical way, it just, I mean, I think it would be irresistible.
Well, if something is as effective or even less effective but a lot cheaper,
Yeah.
are you kidding?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so that's the goal. So that's why we're asking for this. I mean, you know, a lot of people think homeopathy research should be about what remedy do you give for what condition, that sort of predictability. And that's something else that I alluded to, which is when we prepared our information from the time during the COVID epidemic, there were 6 different portals that had been set up for uploading information, and each of them had a different format, and several of them were asking somewhat different research questions. So, for example, the Cliffacall project Cliffacall is a project that's associated with Radar Opus. I think maybe put her down. It's associated with Radar Opus.
Can I just say a shout out to all mothers on the planet walking around with a wriggling thing that's bigger than this? Man. Anyway, sorry, I totally interrupted.
That's okay. No worries.
Yeah.
But during the time of oh look, there's a thumbs up and the whole bit. During the time of the collection of data, one of the main databases was with Cliffacall, which is a part of the Radar Opus company, their work, and it was funny because it was tough for us, even though we uploaded several hundred cases to their initiative. They were asking a really different question. It was based on their work is based on predictability of outcomes. In other words, if you've got a particular named condition, and you know what are the rubrics that are most likely to get you to be able to solve that problem. And we made a choice early on during the project, which was to not, you know, the inside baseball conversation was what's the genus epidemicus and how can we best prescribe on our clients. But in terms of our research and our publication, we wanted to just say, we've done, you know, we're doing volume business and these are the outcomes that we're getting. These are the problems that we saw. In other words, really articulating.
This is how efficient we are in an epidemic.
Yeah.
We are epidemic ready.
Yeah.
We are effective, appropriate, accessible, cost effective, and effective.
Yeah. All those things.
Those are the questions. Yeah.
And so by doing that, you know, getting that out into publications, we weren't trying to say we saw X number of cases of this. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Hahnemann says every epidemic, aphorism 100, every epidemic is a completely new thing. So why worry about the one that already passed unless you're in it? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Anyway, we were talking about Hahnemann and infectious disease. And so, you know, I can't. How can I do a podcast without some book in my hand, right? And so
I've got an itchy nose.
That's from all the.
Yep.
This doesn't have any bejane bugs.
Nope.
No, just dust. Anyway, so this is we have a first edition of the Organon that has in the back of it part 2, and it is translated by Dudgeon. These were collected. You can find these same essays in lesser writings, and the ones the first 3 that I'm going to talk about were published in The Friend of Health. The first 2 were in 1792, the second in 1795. And what's interesting about it is that Hahnemann is showing that he's thinking about disease prevention, and public health. So, and that is something that we don't talk about anymore. People talk about, you know, it's all about the terrain, and it's about, you know, whatever the systems are that people are doing in homeopathy. But Hahnemann, so the first article is Protection Against Infection in Epidemic Diseases, right? And he's talking about how contagions, he says, he's the introduction to this, he's basically saying that there are sort of noxious things that happen as a byproduct of different types of manufacturing and production, right? And then there is the contagious exhalations from dangerous fevers and infectious diseases. Right?
Interesting.
It is really interesting because he's trying to...
The cough, the sneeze.
Yeah, because what he's doing is, this is during the time when anything, the term miasma basically translates to bad air. And at this time, anything that was considered noxious, like swamp fumes, were said to be infectious, right? And so what Hahnemann is doing here that I love is he's saying, look, there's fumes and there's fumes. Yeah. And so he says, these exhalations from dangerous fevers and infectious diseases, they are so subtle that chemistry has never yet been able to subject them to analysis, and consequently has failed to furnish an antidote for them. Most of them are not catching at the distance of a few paces in the open air, not even the plague of the East, but in close chambers, these vapors exist in a concentrated form and then become injurious, dangerous, fatal, and at a considerable distance from the patient. I think that that's amazing, because what he's saying is that there is such thing as a contagious disease.
So that's 1810.
No, this is before 1810. This is 1792.
But
This
it's
is
the
in the
organon,
Friend
right?
of Health. No. This is not in the Organon. These are
Oh, they're the essays. But
these
that's
are
the organon.
essays. This is the Organon, but this is in this first one. Two of them. The first two are Friend of Health, 1792,
Oh.
and then the other one in 1795. Anyway, I think that's so interesting. And then we get to suggestions for the prevention of epidemics in general, especially in towns. And this is basically a public health treatise. In fact, I gave a talk during COVID to a group in India, and I was talking about how Hahnemann basically invented or advocated for social distancing, and I just remember people looking like, "What?" It didn't translate. But for people that were saying,
Well, you know what they say. I mean, because you've now, like me, done some work on the history. Because I studied the history of public health at university undergraduate, when I was 20.
in your whale days.
Back in the whale days. But, it's all about public health. It's all about Snow and Edwin Chadwick.
But this is well before
And then
Snow and
there
Chadwick.
you go. That's 50
Snow
years.
and Chadwick, if you're not familiar, is a cholera epidemic and the pump. And the
Broad Street pump.
Broad Street pump. So tracing of the cases of cholera to get to patient zero and finding that all roads led to this one particular pump where the water was full of contaminants.
And what that means is that that's the marriage of town planning and public health.
Exactly.
And where it all comes together. So that's, sewers and all the rest of it. All of that stuff that the Romans seemed to know 2,000 years ago and everyone just forgot.
Yeah, exactly. Although that's because of the lead pipes. That's because they were using lead pipes and they all got plumbum disease.
That's funny.
Yeah, thank you. Talk about nerd humor. And so anyway, what Hahnemann's talking about here in the suggestion for the prevention. I'm glad that you're amused by that. That's a good one, right? So
we are amused.
We sure are. But Hahnemann's talking about, though, how infections can be transmitted from one person to another. So he's saying that a well-ordered police should take care that rag gatherers are not allowed to live anywhere but in isolated houses near the paper mills, nor shall they be permitted to live in any house in the town, a place where they may deposit the rags by little and little, only to remove them when they've collected a large quantity. In other words, the rag gatherers, people that go house to house, they get the rags, then they keep them in their house until such time as they have enough to do it. He's saying no, because they can hold diseases. I mean, look what happened with smallpox, right? And the Native American people.
Gee, that's interesting. That's
and the smallpox.
quarantining a population, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what he's saying. He's saying, he says, they should also be forbidden to wear such articles themselves or put them on their children, which they will often do to the great detriment of their health, as I have observed. I've seen a malignant epidemic of smallpox spread over the country from so doing. So Hahnemann recognized that idea that smallpox was actually spread, it wasn't just, an airborne infection, but it could live on a blanket and be transmitted to another person through their clothing and so forth, right? And they're saying, they should have people, anyone who's dealing with anything that could transmit diseases should keep a safe distance from everyone else. So Hahnemann was an advocate of public health, of distancing, in recognition to the transmissibility of infectious, whatever he called them, the morbific agents, in 1792.
There you go.
1792. 1992. Dude was on top of things. But
Meanwhile,
then
Jenna, is Jenna this 70, 90? Is that when he's
Jenner
same time, right?
must have been.
Anyone?
Must have been. Here, then he's talking about in prison. So also, he was such a humane person. In prisons, people should have at least 500 cubic feet of space of air for themselves. And their bedding should be changed regularly. When there's an infectious disease around. Oh, I like this. He says, although the animal poisons called infectious miasmata are not infectious at the distance of several paces in still open air, so that we may, with the exercise of great care, preserve our house free from infection in the midst of houses where the malady is raging, we should remember that a draught of air can carry the miasm arising from a sick person to a distance of many paces and then occasion infection. 1792. So far ahead of the game.
I'm trying to think of a pithy statement.
Pithy.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue in the year of 1492.
In 1492.
So Hahnemann da in the year of 1792.
I like this. There's more. I'm trying to see if I can find... There was one more thing in here, but
Yeah,
maybe that'll be for another day.
I reckon.
Yeah.
Because if you're still listening and you were at the JAHC, then you've heard this twice. Well, not this last part. That's totally
For which we
fascinating.
heard that some people got there was some COVID. Not like the super spreader of 2022.
Yeah, that was a super spreader.
That was a super spreader. We got the COVID then.
We did. We got the COVID.
Yeah, I think that we were probably okay because we had just been sick, so our immune systems were still sort of charged up. Anyway, but it was a fun event. The movie, the red carpet. I have to admit, I was cynical about the red carpet business. It was really fun. It was fun. I don't know why I was cynical.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that people would participate. I think that's actually probably what it was. I wasn't sure that people would have the level of excitement that they did, but that excitement was infectious. Infectious. Just carrying it on.
No,
Yeah. That was for your benefit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
I want I would like some feedback, folks. I've been crawling around on the floor for the last half an hour, plugging things in, finding the light,
Oh,
all
you're
the
talking
rest
about
of it.
this video business.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you care?
So, do you care? I'd like to know do you care? What are your questions?
Do this. Will it work on here?
Talk to. Oh, look! Oh my god!
Oh yeah, and then there's the other one to make the fireworks. Oh, if you're only listening on audio, we're trying to make all the Zoom things. So I just did made the hearts. But there's a way you can make fireworks, which I don't remember. Oh, I think you'd do this, something like that.
It's not going to work with two of us. Anyway.
Oh, maybe that's right.
Enough of the toys.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
But you wanted the feedback. Like, does anybody care about doing? Is it worth? Is it
Let
worth
us know.
washing up? Does anybody care to see it on video?
Yeah. At the end of the day. I mean, nice background. Look at this. All the books.
All the books.
All the great books. Let's go through some of these books over the next while.
I mean, that's a reason to do that, is to be able to go through the books.
The one I just found right here is Hull's Ya. We need to go through that book. It's such a good one.
We sure do.
Do you know that Ya was so prolific? One of the great prolific writers. No one's heard of him now.
Yar spelled J. It's with a J-A-H-R.
Ya.
Not Ya.
All right, team, that's it.
That's it. Happy
it's
Friday,
been spiritual.
or whatever
See
day.
you next time.
We'll do it again. Yeah.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao for now.
Home Foundation is hard at work. The Practitioner Generated Research Network is like nothing the homeopathy community has seen before. Through the PGRN, we will be able to bring groundbreaking research to the world that will help protect homeopathy for generations to come. Learn more about how you can contribute to research at homefoundation.org. That's home, HOHM, foundation.org.